They told me my husband couldn't hear a thing, that he was practically gone. The doctor said it was just reflex. But I know what I saw. The moment she walked into that hospital room, his finger moved like his body recognized the betrayal before my mind did. Everyone told me to let go, to grieve. But they had no idea I wasn't grieving a death. I was planning a reckoning. My name is Olivia Harper, and at 38 years old, I thought I had built a life that couldn't be shattered. I worked at Solace Community Care in Wellington, Colorado, helping families navigate their darkest moments. Ironic, really, considering I had no idea my own darkest moment was racing toward me at 70 miles per hour on Highway 287. The call came at 11:43 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I'd been staring at the clock, waiting for Ethan to come home from another late meeting. The ringtone pierced through the silence of our empty house, and somehow, before I even answered, my body knew something was terribly wrong. "Mrs. Harper, this is Riverbend Medical Center. Your husband has been in an accident." The 20-minute drive to the hospital felt like hours. My hands shook against the steering wheel as rain pelted the windshield, each drop exploding like tiny bombs against the glass. The emergency room entrance glowed harsh and fluorescent, a beacon of tragedy in the darkness. The automatic doors hissed open, releasing that distinctive hospital smell disinfectant mixed with fear and grief. "Ethan Harper!" I gasped at the reception desk. "My husband. They said he was in an accident." The nurse's eyes softened with practiced sympathy. "ICU, 3rd floor. The elevator is—" I was already running. The ICU was a maze of machines and curtained spaces, each beep and whisper carrying someone's crisis. A young nurse with tired eyes led me to room 308. Through the glass, I saw him, my husband of 12 years, connected to a ventilator, monitors tracking every failing function of his body. Mrs. Harper. Dr. Morrison, according to his badge, approached with that careful walk doctors use when delivering devastating news. "Your husband suffered severe head trauma. He's in a coma. The next 72 hours are critical." I pressed my palm against the cold glass, watching Ethan's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. This morning, he'd kissed my cheek, distracted, perfunctory, already checking his phone. Now machines were breathing for him. "Can he hear me?" I whispered. We like to believe so. Many families find comfort in talking to their loved ones. I was about to enter when the nurse, the same tired-eyed one, said something that changed everything. "Oh, his earlier visitor left these." She gestured to a bouquet of white lilies on the side table. "She was quite upset, said she'd be back." My blood turned to ice. "Earlier visitor?" "Yes, she was here about an hour ago. Long dark hair, very emotional. Said she was a close friend." Before I could respond, the elevator dinged, and she walked in. Marissa Cole, my former best friend who'd vanished from my life 2 years ago without explanation. She hadn't changed, still had that ethereal beauty that made people stop and stare. Dark hair cascading like silk. Those green eyes that had once shared every secret with me. She froze when she saw me. For a heartbeat, we just stared at each other across the sterile hallway. Then she rushed forward, arms outstretched. "Olivia." "Oh my God, I just heard. I'm so sorry." "What are you doing here, Marissa?" Her embrace faltered mid-reach. I heard about the accident. I wanted to be here for you." "How did you hear we haven't spoken in 2 years? Something flickered across her face. Guilt, fear. Wellington's a small town. News travels. She moved past me toward Ethan's room with a familiarity that made my stomach churn. I followed, watching as she approached his bed. The way she looked at him wasn't the way you look at a friend's husband. It was intimate, desperate, possessive. "Ethan," she whispered, and her hand moved toward his. That's when it happened. His finger twitched. Not a random spasm, a deliberate movement. reaching toward her voice, her touch. The monitor showed a slight spike in brain activity. Dr. Morrison, who'd been reviewing charts nearby, looked up sharply. "Did you see?" he began. "Just reflex," another doctor said dismissively. "Common in coma patients." But I knew better. I knew because Marissa's face had transformed with hope, with relief, with something that looked horrifyingly like love. She glanced at me, realized I'd seen everything, and quickly pulled her hand back. "I should go," she said, but her eyes never left Ethan's face. I'll come back later, when you've had time." She practically fled, leaving behind the scent of her perfume jasmine and vanilla, the same perfume I'd smelled on Ethan's clothes 3 months ago when he'd claimed he'd been at a sports bar with clients. I stood there in that ICU room, watching my husband's still form, the ventilator breathing for him, the monitors tracking his broken body's functions. The white lilies Marissa had brought seemed to glow mockingly in the harsh fluorescent light. She'd been here first. She'd known about the accident before me. My mind raced back through the past months, Ethan's distance, the late nights, the way he'd tense up whenever I mentioned trying to reconnect with Marissa, the way he'd changed his phone password, the weekend conferences that left no hotel receipts. I pulled the visitor chair close to his bed and sat down, my mind cold and clear despite the chaos around me. "Hello, Ethan," I said quietly. "We need to talk about Marissa." His finger twitched again. The cracks in our marriage hadn't appeared overnight. 6 months before the accident, I'd started noticing the distance growing between us like a slow-spreading frost. Ethan would come home at 9, then 10, then 11:30 p.m., always with perfectly reasonable explanations. Client dinners, emergency presentations, team-building events that somehow never included spouses. I remembered the first lie I caught him in, 3 months ago. He'd said he was meeting with the Henderson account at the Chop House downtown, but when I'd stopped by the pharmacy next door for my prescription, I'd seen his car parked at the Marriott across the street. When I'd asked him about it later, casually mentioning I'd been in that area, he'd smoothly explained he'd moved the meeting to the hotel bar for privacy. His delivery was flawless, but his eyes, those brown eyes I'd fallen in love with 14 years ago, they'd flickered away for just a second. Then came the small changes. New cologne that replaced the one I'd bought him for Christmas, working out religiously when he'd never cared about the gym before, the way he'd angle his phone away when texting, thumb moving rapidly across the screen before darkening it whenever I entered the room. But the moment that should have made everything clear was when I'd mentioned Marissa 2 months ago. We'd been having dinner one of the rare nights he was home, and I'd seen a Facebook post from a mutual friend mentioning she was back in Colorado. "I wonder if I should reach out to Marissa," I'd said, spearing a piece of asparagus. "It's been 2 years since she just vanished. Maybe enough time has passed." Ethan's fork had clattered against his plate. "Why would you want to do that? She was my best friend for 15 years. Ethan, don't you think it's strange how she just cut me off?" No explanation. Nothing. "Some friendships just run their course," he'd said, but his knuckles were white around his wine glass. "Besides, if she wanted to reconnect, she knows where to find you." The intensity of his reaction had puzzled me then. Now, standing in this ICU room, watching his unconscious form, it all made horrifying sense. Marissa and I had been inseparable since college at CU Boulder. She'd been my maid of honor, the first person I'd called when I got promoted, the shoulder I'd cried on when we'd lost our first pregnancy. She'd been at our house every Sunday for dinner, knew where we kept the spare key, had her own coffee mug in our kitchen. Then, 2 years ago, she'd simply disappeared, stopped returning calls, texts, emails, moved out of her apartment without a forwarding address. Our mutual friends said she'd needed space and time to figure things out. I'd been devastated, wondering what I'd done wrong, replaying our last conversations, searching for clues. Now I understood. She hadn't run from me. She'd run from what she'd started with my husband. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through Ethan's Instagram, 6 months ago, right when things had started changing. There was a photo from his company's summer party. I'd been sick with a stomach flu that night, insisted he go without me. In the background of a group shot, barely visible but unmistakably there, a flash of dark hair, a familiar profile. Marissa. My hands trembled as I zoomed in. She was looking at him, not the camera. And the expression on her face. Can't sleep either. I jumped. Dr. Morrison stood in the doorway, chart in hand. Just thinking, I said, slipping my phone away. The brain is remarkable, he said, checking Ethan's monitors. Even in coma states, patients often show responses to familiar voices, especially emotional ones. That woman earlier, Marissa. She seemed very affected. She's an old friend, I said carefully. How did she know about the accident? Was she here when they brought him in? He frowned, consulting his notes. Actually, that's unusual. She arrived about 30 minutes after your husband. Said she'd heard about the accident, but the police haven't released any information yet, and there were no other vehicles involved. My blood chilled. What do you mean? No other vehicles? Your husband's car went off the road on a clear stretch of Highway 287. No skid marks. No signs of swerving to avoid anything. The investigators are still trying to determine what caused him to leave the road. I looked back at Ethan, this stranger wearing my husband's face. His phone, I realized. Where was his phone? His personal effects, I said. Where are they? Nursing station has them in a secure bag. You can sign for them whenever you're ready. After he left, I sat in the darkness listening to the ventilator's rhythm. Somewhere in this building, Marissa was probably pacing, waiting for me to leave so she could come back. She'd known about the accident before anyone should have. She'd been here first, and my husband, even comatose, had responded to her presence. I thought about the last 2 years, how Ethan had become so attentive after Marissa disappeared. Date nights, flowers, surprise weekend trips. I'd thought we were reconnecting, growing stronger. Now I wondered if he'd been overcompensating, throwing me off the scent while maintaining his connection with her in secret. The white lilies on the bedside table seemed to mock me. Lilies, death flowers. Had she chosen them deliberately, or was it just another one of their intimate jokes I'd never been privy to? I stood up, my decision crystallizing like ice. You responded to her. Ethan, I whispered to his unconscious form. Your body betrayed your secret. But don't worry, husband. I'm not going anywhere. And neither are you. I'd stepped out to get coffee from the machine down the hall, the bitter hospital brew that tasted like despair but kept me alert. It was 4:15 a.m., that dead hour when the ICU quieted to just the mechanical symphony of life support. I'd been gone maybe 5 minutes, but when I returned, I heard her voice floating through Ethan's doorway. She thought she was alone with him. I pressed myself against the wall outside, my paper cup burning my palm, and listened. Ethan, please, Marissa whispered, her voice thick with tears. You have to wake up. I can't do this without you. I can't lose you now, not when we were so close to finally being together. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to stay silent, invisible. Remember what you promised me. After the divorce papers were filed, you said we'd go to Costa Rica, start fresh where no one knew us. You said by Valentine's Day, we'd be free. That's only 3 weeks away. Baby, please, just wake up. The sound of shifting fabric. Then her voice dropped even lower. Intimate. I know you can hear me. When I walked in earlier and Olivia was there, you responded to me. I felt it. You know I'm here, don't you? You always know. A kiss. The soft, wet sound of her lips on his skin. I love you, she breathed. I've loved you for 2 years. Ever since that night at the company party when Olivia was sick, when you told me you'd been thinking about me for months, that you couldn't stop. God, Ethan, we've been through too much to lose it all now. I heard the chair scrape as she pulled it closer to his bed. I still have the key to the cabin. She continued. Our place. I went there yesterday, before this happened. Everything's still the same. Our photos hidden in the drawer. That wine we were saving. The plans we made. I even brought your favorite shirt, the blue one you left there last week. It still smells like you. Last week, when he'd supposedly been at a 3-day conference in Denver. Olivia doesn't know about the cabin, does she? She doesn't know about any of it. The joint account, the apartment I've been looking at in Sydney, the tickets we bought for March. She's so trusting, so blind. Sometimes I felt guilty. But then I'd remember how you described your marriage. Empty, loveless, just going through the motions. My fingernails dug crescents into my palms. Empty, loveless. We'd made love just last Sunday morning, lazy and comfortable in our sun-drenched bedroom. He'd traced his fingers down my spine and told me I was beautiful. The accident, Marissa said suddenly, her voice changing. Ethan, what were you doing on Highway 287? That's not the way home from your office. Were you coming to see me? I'd texted you that Olivia had called my mother looking for me. Were you worried? A long pause. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the silence. I should have been with you, she whispered, if I hadn't insisted we be careful for a few more weeks. If I hadn't been so paranoid about Olivia finding out before you could file the papers. You wouldn't have been alone in that car. Suddenly, a tear splashed onto something. Paper. I risked a glance around the doorframe. She was holding his hand to her face, crying onto his still fingers. But what made my blood freeze was what I saw clearly, a single tear rolling down Ethan's cheek. He could hear everything. He was in there, aware, responding to her confession of their affair. I'm going to take care of everything, Marissa promised, wiping his tear with her thumb. The insurance, the accounts, all of it. We set it up perfectly. Remember, Olivia won't be able to touch anything. And when you wake up, not if. When we'll still have our future. I promise. Insurance accounts. My mind raced. What had they planned? The elevator dinged softly down the hall. Marissa gasped. Someone's coming. I have to go. But I'll be back, my love. Every day. Every single day until you wake up and choose me. I ducked into the supply closet as she hurried past, dabbing at her eyes. She looked wrecked, devastated, the perfect image of a concerned friend. If I hadn't heard her confession, I might have felt sympathy for her obvious pain. I waited until the elevator doors closed, then walked back into Ethan's room. The tear track was still visible on his cheek. I pulled a tissue from the box and wiped it away, my movements careful, deliberate. Hello, husband, I said quietly, settling into the chair still warm from Marissa's presence. I heard everything, every single word. His heart rate spiked on the monitor. Oh, you can definitely hear me. Can't you? You're in there, trapped in that broken body, fully aware. The doctors might call it reflexive response, but you and I know better. You heard your mistress declare her love. You cried for her, and now you're hearing your wife process the depth of your betrayal. Another spike. The numbers on his blood pressure reading climbed. 2 years, Ethan, 2 years of lies. You made me think Marissa abandoned our friendship when really you'd stolen her from me. Or did she steal you? Does it matter you both betrayed me in the cruelest possible way? I leaned closer, my voice dropping to match Marissa's earlier whisper. But here's what your lover doesn't know. Darling, I'm not the trusting blind fool she thinks I am. I knew something was wrong. I've been documenting everything for months. The receipts, the phone records, the nights you came home smelling like jasmine and vanilla. I even hired a private investigator last month. I just got his preliminary report yesterday. Guess what he found? The monitor began beeping more insistently. A nurse poked her head in. Everything all right, Mrs. Harper. Just talking to my husband, I said sweetly. The doctor said familiar voices might help. She checked his readings, frowned slightly. His vitals are a bit elevated. Try to keep things calm. Stress isn't good for his recovery. After she left, I smiled down at Ethan's still form. Stress isn't good for your recovery, I repeated. But then again, neither is karma. And trust me, my dear husband, karma is just getting started. The home I'd shared with Ethan for 8 years felt like a crime scene. Every surface held potential evidence. Every drawer might contain another knife to twist in my back. I'd left the hospital at 6 a.m., telling the nurses I needed to shower and change. What I really needed was the truth, all of it. I started with his office. The mahogany-paneled room he'd always insisted was his sanctuary. The password to his computer was laughably easy, our anniversary date. How poetic that he'd use our marriage to hide his affair. His email revealed nothing at first. Work correspondence, Amazon receipts, newsletter subscriptions. But then I checked the archived folders, and there it was, project planning. Innocent enough for anyone who might glance over his shoulder. Inside were dozens of emails to private mail, com. My hands trembled as I read their exchanges dating back 2 years. Can't stop thinking about last night. O is at her book club. Come over. E. The cabin is perfect. No one will ever find us there. M. Counted the days wrong. O wants a weekend trip for our anniversary. Have to postpone Sydney planning. E. Sydney. She'd mentioned Sydney to him in the hospital. I searched for more and found a PDF attachment, 2 business class tickets to Sydney. Departing March 15th. One way. The credit card statements were next. Our joint account showed normal purchases, but Ethan had a separate visa I'd never known about. The statements, hidden in a false bottom drawer of his desk, painted a clear picture: jewelry purchases from Tiffany's, hotel charges at the Ritz-Carlton in Denver, monthly payments to Mountain View Cabins for a rental property in Estes Park. I photographed everything with my phone, then called the number for Mountain View Cabins. Hi, this is Olivia Harper. My husband, Ethan Harper, has a rental with you. He's had an accident and I need to collect some of his belongings. Oh, Mrs. Harper, I'm so sorry to hear that. Yes, he has cabin 7 on a long-term lease. He's paid through the end of the year. Would you like the access code? That would be helpful. Thank you. She gave me the code, Ethan's birth date. These two thought they were so clever, using dates they assumed I'd never guess. I wrote down the address and thanked her. The visa statements showed more regular transfers to a Wells Fargo account I didn't recognize. $5,000 here, $3,000 there. Over the past year, he'd moved nearly $60,000. I drove to Wells Fargo with my power of attorney documents, something we'd set up years ago for emergencies. Funny how his Coma now qualified as one. I need information on all accounts held by my husband, Ethan Harper, I told the manager, sliding over the documentation and his death certificate. Death certificate. But you said, sorry, wrong document. I pulled out the hospital paperwork confirming his comatose state. It's been a stressful few days, she typed into her computer, frowning. I show 2 accounts, your joint checking and savings, and another savings account opened 18 months ago. What's the balance on that second account? $58,412, and the authorized users. She hesitated. Mr. Harper and a Miss Marissa Cole. They both have full access. Bingo. I'll need a freeze placed on that account immediately, I said. And a full transaction history printed. I'm not sure I can. My husband is in a coma, and I have full power of attorney. Would you prefer I get our lawyer involved? She printed the records. Back home, I found more evidence in places I'd never thought to look. The garage storage boxes labeled camping gear contained love letters. The back of his golf bag held a burner phone with hundreds of texts between them. The gun safe, which I'd always thought held only his father's antique hunting rifle, also contained a manila envelope with papers that made my blood run cold. Life insurance documents. Ethan had increased his policy 6 months ago from $200,000 to $2 million. But that wasn't the shocking part. The beneficiary change form, dated just 3 weeks ago, was filled out but not yet submitted. It replaced me with Marissa Cole. There was also a draft divorce petition saved on a USB drive hidden behind our wedding photo. He'd planned to file next week, citing irreconcilable differences and claiming I'd been emotionally abusive and controlling. Lies designed to ensure he kept most of our assets. My phone buzzed. The private investigator I'd hired last month. Mrs. Harper, urgent development. Can we meet? We met at a coffee shop downtown. Jim Brennan, former cop turned PI, slid a folder across the table. I've been tracking your husband and Miss Cole for 3 weeks as requested, but yesterday's accident, I don't think it was an accident. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. What? Traffic cameras show your husband's car on Highway 287 at 10:43 p. But here's the thing, he was being followed. This black sedan stays 3 cars behind him the whole way from his office. He showed me grainy photos. Can you identify the sedan? Working on it. But Mrs. Harper, there's more. 30 minutes before the accident, your husband received a call from a burner phone. The same phone called 911 to report the accident, from a location 2 miles away, before any other witnesses could have seen it. Are you saying someone forced him off the road? I'm saying someone wanted him found quickly, but not too quickly. Someone who knew exactly where he'd be and when. I thought about Marissa's words. I should have been with you. Her arrival at the hospital before anyone else. Her knowledge of the accident before the police had released information. Can you prove any of this? Not yet, but I'll keep digging. I left the coffee shop with my mind spinning. Had Marissa orchestrated the accident? Was she more dangerous than just a homewrecker? Or was there another player in this game I hadn't seen yet? Back at the hospital, I found Ethan's mother in the waiting room, clutching her rosary. Olivia. Thank God. That woman, Marissa. She was here again. She said she's practically family. That Ethan would want her here. Should I add her to the visitor list? I smiled, cold as winter. Actually, Mom, I think we need to have a family meeting. There are some things about Ethan you need to know. I think we should have a gathering, I announced to Ethan's mother. Margaret. My voice steady despite the storm inside me. A prayer circle for Ethan's recovery. Both families, close friends, everyone who cares about him. Margaret's eyes lit up with hope. Oh, Olivia, that's beautiful. When? This Saturday. 3 days should give everyone time to arrange their schedules. The hospital has a family conference room we can use. Should I invite that Marissa woman? She seems so concerned about him. I touched her hand gently. Of course. She is a dear friend to both of us. I'll reach out to her personally. That evening, I called Marissa from the hospital lobby, making sure my voice carried just the right amount of exhaustion and vulnerability. Marissa, it's Olivia. A sharp intake of breath. Olivia, how is he? No change. Listen, I wanted to apologize for being cold when you first came. It was just the shock, seeing you after so long, and with everything happening. No, I understand completely. I should have reached out sooner, before this. I'm organizing a gathering this Saturday at 3 p.m. in the hospital's family conference room. Both families, some close friends. We want to pray together, share memories, support each other through this. Will you come? The pause was long enough for me to count 5 heartbeats. Are you sure you want me there? Ethan would want you there, I said, letting my voice crack slightly. You are important to both of us. Room 405 in the East Wing. We'll have light refreshments, share some photos and videos from better times. Maybe our combined positive energy will reach him somehow. I'll be there, she whispered. Thank you, Olivia. This means so much. After hanging up, I made similar calls to 20 others, Ethan's siblings. My parents flying in from Portland, colleagues from both our workplaces, neighbors who'd known us for years. Each received the same warm invitation to celebrate Ethan's life and pray for his recovery. Then I got to work on the real preparation. I spent the next 3 days crafting my presentation with the precision of a prosecutor preparing for trial. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered was digitized, organized, and loaded onto my laptop. The emails, the photos, the financial records, the insurance documents all arranged in chronological order to tell the complete story of betrayal. I visited an audiovisual company and rented a high-quality projection system. "It's for a celebration of life," I told the technician, which wasn't entirely untrue. It would be a celebration of the life I was about to reclaim. At the bakery, I ordered elegant pastries and finger sandwiches. At the florist, I selected White Rose's Purity and New Beginnings. I even bought small printed programs with Ethan's photo and a lovely quote about truth and love. Friday night, I visited Ethan one more time before the gathering. His condition hadn't changed, though the nurses mentioned his brain activity seemed elevated whenever he had visitors. "Tomorrow's the big day," I whispered to his still form. "Everyone will be there. Your mother, who thinks you hung the moon. Your brother, who named his son after you. My parents, who welcomed you as their own son. And Marissa, of course. Your beloved Marissa." The heart monitor's rhythm shifted slightly. "Don't worry, darling. I've planned everything perfectly. After tomorrow, there won't be any more secrets. Isn't that what you always said you wanted transparency in our marriage?" Saturday arrived gray and drizzling, appropriate weather for revelations. I dressed carefully, a black sheath dress that was somber yet powerful, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. I looked like a grieving wife. I felt like an avenging angel. The conference room was perfect. 40 chairs arranged in a semicircle facing the projection screen. The refreshment table elegant against the far wall. Soft instrumental music playing from hidden speakers. I'd even brought battery-powered candles for ambiance. Real flames were prohibited in the hospital. People began arriving at 2:45. Ethan's family clustered together, my parents flanking me protectively. Colleagues murmured in small groups. Everyone spoke in those hushed tones reserved for hospitals and funerals. Marissa arrived at exactly 3 p.m., wearing a navy dress that was appropriately conservative. She'd clearly put thought into looking like a concerned friend rather than a grieving lover. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her makeup was flawless. She signed the guest book I'd placed by the door, then chose a seat in the third row, visible but not presumptuous. "Thank you all for coming," I began, standing at the front with the remote control hidden in my palm. "Ethan would be so touched to know how many people care about him." Murmurs of sympathy rippled through the room. Margaret dabbed at her eyes. "I thought today we could share memories. Look at photos. Remember the man we all love." I clicked the remote, and the screen came alive with a photo of Ethan and me on our wedding day. "But first, I think it's important we acknowledge why we're really here." Another click. The screen changed to a photograph I'd taken yesterday, the cabin in Estes Park. Marissa went rigid. "You see?" I continued, my voice steady as steel. "Ethan has been living a double life, and I think it's time everyone knew exactly who they've been praying for." The room fell silent except for the hum of the projector. "This is the cabin Ethan rented 18 months ago. Not for us, for him and his mistress. Would you like to see who's been visiting him there?" I clicked again. A security camera photo filled the screen, Ethan and Marissa, kissing in the doorway of cabin 7. The gasps were audible. Margaret's rosary clattered to the floor. "No!" Marissa stood up, her face white. "Olivia, please." "Please what? Please don't tell the truth. Please keep your secret, like you kept it for 2 years while pretending to be my friend." I clicked to the next slide, their email exchanges, blown up for everyone to read. "Can't stop thinking about last night. O is at book club. Come over. Counting days until we're free." "Stop!" Marissa's voice cracked. "This is cruel. He's lying in a coma." "Cruel," I laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "Let me show you cruel." The next slide, bank statements. $60,000, systematically stolen from our joint future and placed in an account with your name on it. Ethan's brother, James, stood up. "Olivia, what the hell is this?" "This is the truth. James, your brother and Marissa have been planning to leave the country together. One-way tickets to Sydney, purchased last month." Click. The tickets appeared on screen. Margaret was sobbing now, her husband's arm around her shoulders. My mother had moved to stand beside me, her hand on my back in silent support. "But wait," I said, my voice growing stronger. "There's more." Click. The insurance documents filled the screen. 3 weeks ago, Ethan prepared paperwork to make Marissa the beneficiary of his $2 million life insurance policy. He hadn't submitted it yet, but the intention was clear. "You're twisting everything," Marissa shouted. "We fell in love? Is that a crime? You don't understand what we have had," I corrected. "What you had? And you're right. I don't understand how you could sit across from me at dinner every Sunday for years, knowing you were sleeping with my husband. I don't understand how you could help me plan our anniversary party while planning to run away with him." I clicked again. A photo of the 3 of us from last Christmas appeared Marissa between Ethan and me, all of us smiling at my parents' house. "This was taken 2 weeks after you two booked the Sydney tickets," I said quietly. "You sat at our Christmas table, ate my mother's turkey, exchanged gifts with us, and the whole time." "We need to check on Ethan," someone said. "This stress, the energy in here, it can't be good for him." "You're absolutely right," I agreed. "Let's go see him. All of us." The group moved like a funeral procession through the hospital corridors. Visitors and staff stepped aside, sensing something momentous was happening. When we reached the ICU, the nurses looked alarmed at the size of our group, but I explained we just needed a moment of family prayer circle. They allowed us into Ethan's room in shifts. When Marissa's turn came, she approached his bed with trembling hands. "Ethan," she whispered, reaching for him. That's when it happened clear as day, in front of 20 witnesses. Ethan's hand moved, his fingers stretching toward her voice. The heart monitor spiked dramatically. His eyes moved beneath closed lids. "He's responding to her," James said in disbelief. "Jesus Christ, he's actually responding to her," Marissa sobbed, gripping his hand. "I'm here, baby, I'm here." And then, impossibly, a sound emerged from Ethan's throat, a low moan, unintelligible but unmistakably directed at Marissa. Dr. Morrison, who'd been alerted by the nurses, pushed through the crowd. "Everyone out except immediate family. Now." "She's not family," Margaret shrieked, pointing at Marissa. "Get her away from my son. Mrs. Harper has power of attorney," Dr. Morrison said. "She decides who stays." All eyes turned to me. I stood there, calm in the eye of the storm I'd created. "Marissa stays," I said quietly. "Let everyone see exactly who he reaches for." The next few minutes were chaos. Ethan's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, but definitely open. His fingers kept moving toward Marissa's voice. He couldn't speak through the ventilator, but his body language was clear to everyone watching. "Ethan, can you hear me? Dr. Morrison performed quick neurological tests. Squeeze my hand if you understand." A weak squeeze. "This is remarkable," the doctor murmured. "He's showing signs of emerging from the coma." "It's her," Margaret said bitterly, tears streaming down her face. "He's waking up for her. Not his wife, not his mother. Her." Marissa was crying too, pressing Ethan's hand to her cheek. "I love you," she kept repeating. "I'm here. I love you." I watched it all with clinical detachment. This was better than any presentation I could have prepared. Ethan's own body was testifying to his affair, providing evidence no one could deny or explain away. "I think we've seen enough," I said finally. "Marissa, you should know that while you were declaring your love, I've had my lawyer preparing divorce papers. They'll be filed Monday morning." Ethan's eyes tracked to me, wide with what looked like panic. "Oh, you can hear me too. Darling, good. You should also know that I've frozen all our accounts, including your secret fund with Marissa. The insurance company has been notified about the fraudulent beneficiary change attempt. And that cabin you two love so much, it's in your name. Ethan, community property. My lawyer says I'll get half of everything, including that." "You can't," Marissa protested. "Watch me. I said. Oh, and the police will want to talk to you about the accident. Marissa. Seems there are some questions about a black sedan following Ethan, about a mysterious 911 call. You wouldn't know anything about that. Would you? The color drained from her face completely. Dr. Morrison intervened. Everyone needs to leave. Mr. Harper needs rest and quiet. This level of stimulation could cause a setback. As we filed out, I took one last look at Ethan. He was staring at me, tears running down his face, his mouth moving soundlessly around the ventilator tube. I couldn't read lips, but I didn't need to. I knew what he was trying to say. I'm sorry, always comes too late. Monday morning arrived with surgical precision. I sat in the law offices of Brennan and Associates at 9 sharp, watching as Patricia Brennan, one of Denver's most ruthless divorce attorneys, laid out the papers like a general planning an attack. The evidence you've provided is overwhelming, Patricia said, adjusting her reading glasses. The adultery, the financial fraud, the attempt to change insurance beneficiaries he doesn't have a leg to stand on. What about Marissa? I asked. Can we go after her? Alienation of affection laws were abolished in Colorado, but the financial fraud is different. The $60,000 in that joint account. We can argue it was marital assets stolen without your consent. She could face criminal charges. Good. File everything. My phone buzzed a text from the private investigator. Check your email. Urgent. The attachment made my blood run cold. Traffic camera footage from the night of Ethan's accident showed Marissa's car, not a black sedan, but her silver BMW at a gas station 2 miles from the accident site at 10:30 p. M. Timestamp showed her purchasing water and anxiety medication. The receipt timestamp was 10:37 p. M. Ethan's accident was reported at 10:43 p. M. Patricia, I said, showing her the footage. We need to add attempted murder to our concerns. Within hours, the divorce filing hit Ethan like a sledgehammer. The hospital called he'd become agitated when served and had to be sedated. His mother called me crying, begging me to reconsider. His brother sent texts calling me heartless. I ignored them all. By Tuesday, the police had opened an investigation into the accident. Detective Sarah Coleman interviewed me at the hospital cafeteria. Mrs. Harper, were you aware your husband was having an affair? I suspected for months. I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago. And Miss Cole, did she know you were investigating? I don't think so, but she knew I was asking questions. I'd called her mother looking for her the day of the accident. Detective Coleman made notes. We've found some inconsistencies in Miss Cole's timeline that night. She claims she was home, but her phone records show she was near the accident site. Have you questioned her? She's hired a lawyer. Won't talk without immunity. Wednesday brought more revelations. The forensics team found evidence that Ethan's brake lines had been partially cut, not enough to fail immediately, but enough to fail under stress, like taking a sharp curve at high speed. Patricia called with updates. The judge has frozen all assets pending division. The insurance company has launched their own investigation. And here's the interesting part. Marissa tried to access the joint account this morning. When she couldn't, she went to Ethan's room and they had to remove her for causing a disturbance. By Thursday, Ethan was well enough to have the ventilator removed. His first words, according to the nurse who called me, were, "Where's Olivia?" I don't think you should see him, Patricia advised. Not until the papers are finalized. But I needed closure. I arrived at the hospital at 8 p.m. when I knew visiting hours would ensure witnesses were present. Ethan looked smaller somehow, diminished. His eyes tracked my entrance with desperate hope that died when he saw my expression. "Olivia," he rasped. "Please, let me explain." There's nothing to explain. Your body did all the talking when you reached for her instead of me. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. No. How was it supposed to happen? Ethan, were you going to file for divorce next week like you planned? Or were you going to wait until after you'd transferred the rest of our savings? Or maybe after the insurance beneficiary change went through? He closed his eyes. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. Every day for 2 years. You hurt me. Every lie. Every late meeting. Every time you came home smelling like her perfume and made love to me anyway. The accident? Was Marissa trying to kill you? Or were you two planning something together that went wrong? The police seem very interested in why your brake lines were cut. His eyes flew open. Cut. No, that's impossible. Marissa would never. Wouldn't she? She stood to gain $2 million if you died. But then again, you were worth more to her alive, weren't you? At least until you could divorce me and marry her. A knock at the door interrupted us. Detective Coleman entered with 2 uniforms. Mr. Harper, you're under arrest for insurance fraud and embezzlement of marital assets. You have the right to remain silent. What, no? Ethan tried to sit up, wincing in pain. Olivia, please tell them this is a mistake. The only mistake, I said, standing to leave, was trusting you. As they read him his rights, I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, Ethan, your mother asked me to tell you she's so disappointed she can't bear to visit. Your brother is telling everyone at the country club what you did, and Marissa. She's been trying to get immunity by testifying against you. Seems when the money dried up, so did her love. The last image I had of my husband was him sobbing in a hospital bed while police officers waited to handcuff him once the doctor cleared it. Friday morning brought the final blow. Patricia called with news that made everything else pale in comparison. Olivia, sitting down. The investigator found something. Marissa Cole isn't even her real name. It's Marissa Brennan. She's got 2 fraud convictions under that name in California. She targets married men with money, gets them to leave their wives, then disappears with everything she can grab. Ethan wasn't her first victim. I sat in my empty kitchen, in my house that would soon be sold, holding the phone as Patricia continued talking about next steps, court dates, asset division. But all I could think about was that I'd lost my husband to a professional con artist. He'd destroyed our marriage for someone who'd never loved him at all. The cruelest revenge wasn't mine, it was Marissa's. And Ethan didn't even know it yet. 6 weeks had passed since the accident. The divorce was final. Colorado's expedited process for cases involving fraud moved swiftly. I'd kept the house but sold it immediately, not wanting to live among the ghosts of a dead marriage. The proceeds, along with my settlement, gave me enough to start fresh anywhere I wanted. Marissa had disappeared the moment the police started closing in. Her accounts were empty. The cabin abandoned. Even her apartment cleared out overnight. She'd played Ethan perfectly and vanished like smoke when the game ended. The police had a warrant for her arrest, but professionals like her knew how to disappear. Ethan had been released from the hospital into police custody, then released on bail paid by his mother. The insurance fraud charges were dropped. He hadn't actually filed the paperwork, but the embezzlement charges stuck. He'd received 2 years probation and restitution payments that would drain him for the next decade. His reputation, career, and family relationships were destroyed. I hadn't seen him since that night in the hospital. Until today. I was at Riverbend Medical Center for a final meeting with my lawyer when I saw him in the lobby. He was sitting in a wheelchair, waiting for physical therapy. The accident had left him with a permanent limp. His mother sat beside him, aged 10 years in 2 months. He saw me at the same moment. His face crumpled with an emotion I couldn't identify: regret, hatred, hope. 5 minutes. I told Patricia, I need 5 minutes. I walked over, my heels clicking on the polished floor. Margaret immediately stood, placing herself between us. Haven't you done enough? She hissed. It's okay, Mom, Ethan said quietly. Please. Give us a moment. She reluctantly moved away, shooting me a venomous look. I stood there, looking down at the man I'd once promised to love forever. He looked older, grayer, broken in ways that had nothing to do with his physical injuries. Olivia, he began. Don't, I said. I'm not here for apologies or explanations. I just came to tell you something the police discovered yesterday. His eyes widened slightly. Marissa, or whatever her real name is, she wasn't trying to kill you that night. The brake lines. She was planning to cut them after you'd transferred the final payment to Sydney. The accident was just bad timing. You hit that curve before she could finish her plan. The color drained from his face. What? She never loved you. Ethan. The investigation found 3 other men in 3 other states. Same pattern. She'd seduce them, get them to leave their wives, drain their accounts, then disappear. One of them killed himself after she left. His hands trembled in his lap. That's not... We were going to Sydney together. No, Ethan. She was going to Sydney. You were going to be another discarded fool, broke and alone, wondering how you'd been so stupid. You're lying. You're just trying to hurt me. I pulled out my phone and showed him the police report Patricia had forwarded. Photos of Marissa with different men, different names, same predatory smile. He read it in silence, tears sliding down his cheeks. The funny thing is, I said, putting my phone away, if you hadn't crashed that night, she would have destroyed you completely. Your accident actually saved you from losing everything to her. You only lost everything to me instead. Why are you telling me this? Because I wanted you to know the truth. You didn't just betray me for another woman, you betrayed me for a con artist. You destroyed our marriage for someone who saw you as nothing more than a mark. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Ethan, remember when you were in the coma and you reached for her? That moment when everyone saw who you really chose. She was already planning to run. She'd started emptying the accounts that morning before your accident. While you were reaching for her, declaring your love with your broken body, she was calculating how much she could steal before disappearing. Olivia, wait. But I was already walking away, my heels echoing through the lobby. At the door, I turned back one last time. I'm not here to forgive you, I said, loud enough for him and his mother to hear clearly. I'm here so you can see exactly who you lost fully awake. The automatic doors closed between us with a soft hiss. Outside, the Colorado sun was shining, the mountains crisp against the blue sky. Patricia was waiting by her car. Feel better? She asked. No, I said honestly, but I feel finished. I got in my own car and drove away from Riverbend Medical Center for the last time. In my rearview mirror, I could see Ethan being wheeled out by his mother, both of them broken by choices that could never be undone. Tomorrow I would fly to Seattle to start my new job. New city, new life, new beginning. The betrayal would always be part of my story, but it wouldn't define my ending. Some women cry when their marriages end. Some beg. Some forgive. But sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is simply walk away, leaving the ruins to those who created them. My revenge wasn't about destroying Ethan. It was about refusing to let his choices destroy me. And in that, I had won everything that truly mattered. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect with each other. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in my situation? Let's discuss in the comments.